The scream that tore through the dusty streets of Casa Grande, Arizona Territory, that scorching afternoon in 1878 made every head turn. But it was just Felicity Anderson again, standing in the middle of the mercantile with tears streaming down her face because she could not remember which coin was which. The proprietor's wife was growing impatient, her thin mouth pressed into a hard line as she repeated for the third time that the flour cost 20 cents. But Felicity just stared at the silver pieces in her palm like they were foreign artifacts from another world entirely. Samuel Hartley had been loading supplies onto his pack mule when he heard the commotion. He was a mountain man through and through, standing well over 6 feet tall with shoulders so broad they blocked the sun when he stood in a doorway. His dark hair hung past his collar, tangled from weeks in the high country, and his arms were thick with muscle from years of trapping, hunting, and surviving alone in the wilderness. He had come down from the mountains to trade his furs and stock up on supplies, planning to return before the week was out. But something about that frightened cry pulled at him in a way he could not quite explain. Inside the mercantile, Felicity was trembling. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a simple braid, and her blue eyes were wide with confusion and shame. At 20 years old, she had the face of an angel but the mind of someone who struggled with even the simplest tasks. The other customers were whispering now, some with pity, others with poorly concealed irritation. "Just give me any coin, then," the proprietor's wife snapped, reaching for Felicity's hand. "No, wait." Samuel's deep voice cut through the tension like a knife. He stepped forward, his boots heavy on the wooden floor. "Miss, may I help you?" Felicity looked up at him, and Samuel felt something shift in his chest. Her eyes were not vacant as some cruel folks claimed. They were full of feeling, full of fear and confusion, yes, but also intelligence of a different kind. She bit her lip and nodded, fresh tears spilling over. "How much does she owe?" Samuel asked the proprietor's wife. 20 cents for the flour and 15 for the sugar. But she cannot seem to figure out which coins to give me, and I have other customers waiting. Samuel reached into his own pocket and placed 2 quarters on the counter. "That should cover it." "Sir, you do not have to do that," Felicity whispered, her voice small and uncertain. "I know I do not have to, I want to." He gathered up the flour and sugar, then gently touched her elbow. "Come on, let us get you outside where it is quieter." She followed him without protest, clutching her empty basket. Once they were on the wooden sidewalk, away from the staring eyes, she seemed to breathe a little easier. Samuel set the supplies in her basket and stepped back, giving her space. "Thank you," she said, looking at the ground. "I get confused with the numbers sometimes, and the coins. They all look so similar, and when people get impatient, I get more confused, and then I cannot think at all." "I understand," Samuel said, though he was not entirely sure he did. "Where are you staying? Do you need help getting home?" "I live with my aunt on the edge of town. She sent me for supplies, but I keep making mistakes." Her voice cracked. "She says I am a burden. The doctor in Tucson diagnosed me when I was 15. He said my mind is simple, that I will always be easily confused and I will never be like other people." Samuel felt a flash of anger at the doctor, at the aunt, at everyone who had made this young woman feel small. "The doctor is a fool," he said firmly. Felicity's head snapped up, surprise written across her features. "What? Anyone who thinks you are simple is not looking close enough. You got confused, that is all. We all get confused sometimes." "Not like me." Her voice was flat, defeated. "I cannot do arithmetic. I cannot follow complicated instructions. Sometimes I forget what I am doing in the middle of doing it. My parents died of fever when I was 17, and my aunt took me in, but she tells everyone in town that I am touched in the head." Samuel's jaw tightened. He had spent the last 10 years living alone in the mountains, preferring the company of animals and trees to most people he had known. He had his reasons for leaving civilization behind, most of them involving the cruelty and small-mindedness of so-called decent folk. Looking at Felicity now, he saw someone who had been judged and dismissed by people who could not see past their own limited understanding. "Walk with me," he said, surprising himself. "Just for a bit. I want to show you something." She hesitated, but something in his eyes must have reassured her because she nodded and fell into step beside him. He led her away from the main street, past the saloon and the church, toward the edge of town where the desert stretched out in shades of gold and rust. The mountains rose in the distance, purple and mysterious. "See that?" Samuel pointed to a hawk circling overhead. "That bird does not think in numbers or coins. It thinks in wind currents and prey and survival. Is it simple-minded? I suppose not," Felicity said slowly. "And that mesquite tree over there, it does not grow in straight lines like the white pine up north. It grows twisted and gnarled. Is it wrong because it is different? No, but I am not a bird or a tree. I am a person, and people are supposed to be able to count money and remember things." Samuel stopped walking and turned to face her. "You remembered that you needed flour and sugar. You got yourself to the mercantile. You were trying to pay correctly. The only problem was that someone made you nervous and your mind froze up. That does not make you simple. That makes you human." Felicity stared at him, and for the first time since he had met her, she smiled. It was tentative and small, but it transformed her face. "You are very kind," she said. "Most people do not talk to me except to give me simple tasks or to ask me to move out of the way." "Then most people are missing out," Samuel replied. He meant it. There was something about her that drew him in, a gentleness and honesty that he had rarely encountered. In his experience, most people wore masks and played games. Felicity was exactly who she appeared to be, unguarded and genuine. They stood there as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Samuel knew he should get back to his supplies, should finish his business in town and head back to his cabin in the mountains. But he found himself reluctant to leave her. "What is your name?" Felicity asked. "I should know the name of the man who was so kind to me." "Samuel Hartley. Folks call me Sam." "I am Felicity Anderson. Most folks just call me that poor addled girl." "Well, Felicity, I think most folks need to learn some manners." He smiled at her and she laughed, a sound like water over stones, clear and bright. "Will you be in town long, Mr. Hartley?" "Just Sam. And I was planning to leave tomorrow, but I might stay another day or two." He was not sure why he said it, but the words felt right. "I would like that," she said softly. "I would like to talk to you again if that would be all right." "I would like that too." They walked back toward town together and Samuel carried her basket. He left her at the gate of a small adobe house on the outskirts, where a stern-looking woman was waiting on the porch with her arms crossed. "Where have you been?" the woman demanded. "You have been gone for over 2 hours for a simple errand." "I am sorry, Aunt Margaret. I had some trouble at the mercantile and this gentleman helped me." Margaret Anderson looked Samuel up and down, her expression suspicious. "We do not need charity from mountain men. Felicity, get inside." Samuel handed Felicity the basket. "It was no trouble at all, madam." "Your niece is very pleasant company." Margaret snorted. "Pleasant she may be, but she is about as useful as a screen door on a submarine. Get inside, Felicity." Felicity's cheeks burned red with shame, but she obeyed, casting one last grateful look at Samuel before disappearing into the house. Samuel tipped his hat to Margaret, though it took all his restraint not to tell her exactly what he thought of her treatment of her niece, and turned away. That night, Samuel could not sleep. He had rented a room above the saloon, and the noise from below was part of the problem, but mostly it was Felicity's face that kept appearing in his mind. The way she had looked so frightened in the mercantile, the way her aunt had spoken to her with such casual cruelty. He had seen a lot of ugly things in his life, but something about the systematic breaking down of that young woman's spirit struck him as particularly wrong. He rose before dawn and walked through the quiet streets. Without really planning it, he found himself near Margaret Anderson's house. He told himself he was just checking to make sure Felicity was all right, but even he knew that was not the whole truth. The truth was that he wanted to see her again, wanted to hear her voice and see that tentative smile. As the sun rose, he saw her emerge from the house carrying a basket of laundry. She walked toward a clothesline in the yard, moving slowly, carefully. He watched as she hung each item, focusing intently on the task. When a sheet slipped from her hands and fell to the dirt, he saw her shoulders slump in defeat. "Morning," he called out, not wanting to startle her by approaching unannounced. She turned and her face lit up. "Sam, you are still here. Told you I might stay a few more days." He walked closer, stopping at the fence. "Need any help with that laundry?" "Oh no, I can manage. It just takes me longer than it takes most people. I have to think about each step or I get mixed up." Nothing wrong with being careful and thoughtful. She looked at him with such gratitude that it made his chest ache. "My aunt says I am slow and clumsy." "Your aunt says a lot of things that are not true." He said it quietly but with conviction. Felicity glanced back at the house nervously. "She means well. She took me in when I had nowhere else to go. That does not give her the right to be cruel." "It is not cruelty, it is just truth. I cannot do things right." But even as she said it, she did not sound convinced. Samuel leaned against the fence post, his muscular arms crossed over his broad chest. "You ever been outside of Casa Grande?" "Not since I came here 3 years ago." "Why?" "Just thinking. A person could see a lot more of themselves if they got away from people telling them what they are and are not." "I could not leave. Where would I go? What would I do?" "Those are fair questions," Samuel admitted, "but they are not impossible questions." They talked for a while longer until Margaret came outside and told Felicity to stop bothering the stranger and finish her chores. Samuel left, but he returned the next day and the day after that. Each time, he and Felicity would talk, sometimes about nothing in particular, sometimes about deeper things. He told her about his life in the mountains, about the cabin he had built with his own hands, about the wildlife and the seasons and the peace he found in solitude. She told him about her childhood before her parents died, about how she had loved drawing and flowers, and the way rain sounded on a tin roof. "You know what I think?" Samuel said one afternoon as they sat on a bench outside the general store. "I think your mind works differently than some people's minds, but that does not make it less. It makes it unique. The doctor said I would never be able to live on my own, that I would always need someone to take care of me. Doctors do not know everything. I have seen men who could recite every line of Shakespeare but could not survive 3 days in the wilderness. Are they simple-minded? That is different." "How?" She opened her mouth to answer, then closed it, thinking. "I suppose it is not so different, it is just different kinds of knowing." "Exactly." Samuel felt a surge of something warm and protective. Over the past week, he had come to care for Felicity in a way that both surprised and frightened him. He had spent so long alone, had convinced himself he preferred it that way. But being around her made him realize how lonely he had actually been. "Sam," she said quietly, "why are you being so kind to me?" "Because you deserve kindness, and because I enjoy your company. But I am not smart or interesting. I am just the addled girl who cannot count her coins right." He turned to face her fully, his dark eyes intense. You are smart about things that matter. You notice when someone is sad. You are gentle with animals. You see beauty in small things. You are honest and genuine. Those are rare qualities, Felicity, rare and precious." Her eyes filled with tears, but they were different tears than the ones he had seen that first day. These were tears of something like hope. "No one has ever talked to me the way you do. Then no one has been seeing you clearly." They sat in silence for a moment, and Samuel felt the weight of a decision pressing down on him. He had been thinking about it for days now, turning it over in his mind like a stone in his pocket. It was crazy, impulsive, possibly foolish. But then again, the best things in life often were. "Felicity, I want to ask you something, and I want you to think about it carefully before you answer." She looked at him with those clear blue eyes, waiting. "Come with me, up to the mountains. Come see my home, see if you might like it there. No pressure, no expectations. Just a chance to get away from people who make you feel small and spend some time in a place where you can be yourself." Her mouth fell open in shock. "I could not possibly do that. It would not be proper, and my aunt would never allow it. You are 20 years old, Felicity. You do not need your aunt's permission. As for proper, we could stop in Tucson on the way and get married if that would make it more respectable." The words were out before he could stop them, and for a moment, Samuel wondered if he had gone too far, too fast. But as he looked at her stunned face, he realized he meant every word. He wanted to marry her. He wanted to take her away from this town and the people who did not appreciate her. He wanted to show her that she was not broken or deficient, that she was exactly enough just as she was. "Married." She whispered, "But you barely know me." "I know enough. I know that you make me want to be around people again after 10 years of solitude. I know that your heart is good and pure. I know that I would rather spend my life with you than without you. Sam, I am not like other women. I will forget things. I will need help with tasks that other wives can do easily. I will frustrate you. And I am not like other men. I live in a cabin in the mountains, far from civilization. I am rough around the edges, and I have spent so long alone that I have probably forgotten half the social graces I ever knew. But I am strong, and I am patient, and I will never make you feel ashamed of who you are." Felicity stood up abruptly and walked a few paces away, her back to him. Samuel waited, his heart pounding harder than it ever had during a bear encounter or a winter storm. Finally, she turned back to him. "I am frightened," she admitted. "I know. But are you also maybe a little bit hopeful?" A slow smile spread across her face. "Yes, I am also a little bit hopeful." "Then that is enough to start with. What if I cannot do it? What if I cannot manage living in the mountains? Then we will figure something else out. But Felicity, I truly believe you can do more than anyone has given you credit for. You just need someone who believes in you, and I do." She walked back to him and took his hands in hers. They were small and soft compared to his calloused, scarred ones, but they fit together perfectly. "I want to say yes," she said. "I want to say yes so badly, but I am terrified. Being terrified is not a reason not to do something. Sometimes it is the best reason to do it. What about my aunt? She will be furious. Your aunt will survive. The question is, will you survive staying here being treated like you are less than you are?" Felicity took a deep breath, and Samuel could see her gathering her courage. "All right," she said. "Yes, I will come with you. I will marry you." The joy that flooded through Samuel was unlike anything he had ever felt. He pulled her into his arms, and she came willingly, resting her head against his broad chest. He could feel her trembling, but she did not pull away. "We will leave tomorrow," he said. "Pack whatever you want to bring. I will handle your aunt. She will try to stop me. She can try." That evening, Samuel went to Margaret Anderson's house and knocked on the door. When she answered, her face immediately hardened at the sight of him. "What do you want, mountain man?" "I want to marry your niece, and I want your blessing." Margaret laughed, a harsh, barking sound. My blessing. Why would I give you that? Felicity is simple-minded. She needs constant supervision. She cannot possibly be a wife to anyone. With respect, madam, you are wrong. Felicity is capable of far more than you think, and I am willing to spend my life proving that to her. You will regret this within a month. She will burn your food, lose your belongings, forget everything you tell her. She is a child in a woman's body. Samuel felt his temper rising but kept his voice level. She is a woman who has been told she is incapable for so long that she has started to believe it. But I have seen her. I have talked to her. I have watched the way her mind works, and it is beautiful and unique. If you cannot see that, then you have been looking at her all wrong. I have been caring for her for 3 years, providing her with food and shelter. You have known her for a week, and in that week, I have shown her more kindness than you have in 3 years. Margaret's face turned red. How dare you come to my home and insult me? Get off my property. I will, but Felicity is coming with me. We are leaving tomorrow for Tucson, and then we are going to the mountains where I live. You can accept this gracefully, or you can make it difficult. Either way, it is happening. She will never survive in the wilderness. She will be dead within the year. Or she will thrive. I guess we will find out. Samuel tipped his hat and walked away, leaving Margaret sputtering on her doorstep. He knew he had probably just made an enemy, but he did not care. He had spent too long watching the world's injustices without acting. This time, he was going to do something right. The next morning, Samuel loaded his pack mule and his horse, then went to collect Felicity. She was waiting at the gate with a small carpetbag, her face pale but determined. Margaret stood in the doorway, her arms crossed. You are making a mistake, Margaret called out. Do not come crying back to me when he abandons you in the wilderness. I will not abandon her, Samuel said firmly. I am a man of my word. He helped Felicity onto his horse, then swung up behind her. She felt small and fragile in front of him, but also brave. She did not look back as they rode out of Casa Grande, and Samuel felt a fierce pride in her courage. The journey to Tucson took 2 days. They rode mostly in comfortable silence, though Samuel pointed out landmarks and wildlife along the way. Felicity seemed fascinated by everything, asking questions and observing the world around her with fresh eyes. When they camped that first night, Samuel showed her how to arrange the bedrolls and tend the fire. I am not sure I can remember all these steps, she said anxiously, as he demonstrated how to build the fire properly. You do not have to remember everything at once. We will do it together until it becomes familiar, and even if you forget sometimes, that is all right. I am here. She looked at him across the firelight. Why are you not frustrated with me? Why would I be? My aunt was always frustrated. So were the teachers at school before my parents died. Everyone gets frustrated with me eventually. Samuel moved around the fire to sit beside her. Those people were impatient and unkind. I am neither of those things. And Felicity, the truth is, I forget things too sometimes. I once spent an entire day tracking an elk only to realize I had left my rifle back at camp. I felt like the biggest fool alive. Does that make me simple-minded? She giggled. No, it makes you human. Exactly. We all make mistakes. We all forget things. You just happen to forget a bit more often, and in a world that does not have much patience, that has been used against you. But it does not have to be that way. That night, lying in her bedroll under the vast Arizona sky, Felicity felt something she had not felt in years: peace. Samuel slept nearby, his presence solid and reassuring. She could hear his steady breathing, could see the stars wheeling overhead. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she was not broken. Maybe she was just different, and maybe different could be all right. They reached Tucson late the next afternoon. The territorial capital was larger and busier than Casa Grande, and Felicity felt overwhelmed by the crowds and noise. Samuel noticed her discomfort and kept her close, his hand on her elbow, guiding her through the streets. They found a small church on the edge of town, and Samuel knocked on the door. A kindly priest answered, listening as Samuel explained their situation. The priest agreed to marry them that very evening with 2 parishioners as witnesses. Felicity stood beside Samuel in her simple calico dress, her hand trembling in his, and repeated the vows that would bind them together for life. When the priest pronounced them man and wife, Samuel turned to her and gently cupped her face in his large, calloused hands. "You are mine now, and I am yours. I will protect you and care for you and remind you every day that you are precious and valued." "I will try my best to be a good wife," Felicity whispered. "Even if I am not very good at it, you will be a wonderful wife, I have no doubts." He kissed her then, soft and sweet, and Felicity felt tears slip down her cheeks. But these were happy tears, tears of relief and joy and tentative hope. They spent their wedding night in a modest hotel, and Samuel was patient and gentle with Felicity, sensing her nervousness. He took his time, showing her through touch and whispered words that she was beautiful and desired. Felicity had spent so long feeling like a burden, like something defective that people tolerated out of duty, that being wanted and cherished was almost overwhelming. But Samuel made her feel safe, and slowly, she relaxed into his arms. The next morning they began the journey into the mountains. The terrain grew rougher and more rugged as they climbed higher, leaving the desert behind for forests of pine and oak. Samuel pointed out edible plants and animal tracks, teaching her the language of the wilderness. Felicity listened intently, asking questions when she was confused, and Samuel never once made her feel foolish. "You learn quickly when the pressure is off," he observed on their 3rd day of travel. "I never thought of it that way," she said. "But you are right. When people are patient with me, when they do not make me feel rushed or stupid, I can understand things much better. That is because there is nothing wrong with your mind. You just need information presented in a way that works for you, and you need time to process it without feeling judged. That is not too much to ask." They reached Samuel's cabin a week after leaving Casa Grande. It sat in a small clearing surrounded by towering ponderosa pines, with a stream running nearby. The cabin was solidly built from logs, with a stone chimney and a covered porch. It was small but well made, the work of a man who understood how to live with the land. "This is home," Samuel said, helping Felicity down from the horse. "What do you think?" She looked around, taking in the beauty of the place. Birds sang in the trees, and the air was cool and fresh. "It is beautiful," she breathed. "I never imagined anywhere could be so peaceful." "It is peaceful because it is far from people and their noise and judgment, but it is also isolated. The nearest town is a 2-day ride. Are you sure you can handle that?" "I think I can handle it better than living in a town where everyone thinks I am deficient." Samuel smiled and kissed the top of her head. "Come on, let me show you inside." The cabin was one large room with a sleeping loft above. There was a stone fireplace, a sturdy table and chairs, shelves lined with supplies, and a bed frame that Samuel had built himself. It was simple but comfortable, the home of a man who valued function over decoration. "I know it is not much," Samuel said, suddenly feeling self-conscious. "It is perfect," Felicity said firmly. "It is ours. That makes it perfect." Over the following weeks, Samuel taught Felicity the rhythms of mountain life. He showed her how to tend the vegetable garden he had planted, how to preserve food for winter, how to recognize the signs of changing weather. He taught her to fish in the stream and to gather wild herbs. Some tasks came easily to her, others took longer, but Samuel never lost patience. Felicity discovered that she had a natural affinity for working with plants. She could remember which herbs were medicinal and which were poisonous, could identify them by sight and smell. She also had a gift with animals. The chickens Samuel kept for eggs seemed to prefer her company to his, and when a wild deer approached their cabin, it was Felicity it came to, eating apple slices from her hand. "You have a gentle spirit," Samuel told her one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "Animals sense that. They trust you." "I never thought I was good at anything," Felicity said softly, "but here, I feel like I am discovering parts of myself I did not know existed." "That is because you are finally free to discover them. You are not being told what you cannot do. You are just being allowed to be." As summer turned to fall, their love deepened. Samuel had never been a man of many words, but he found himself talking more with Felicity, sharing stories of his past and dreams for the future. She listened with her whole heart, asking questions and offering insights that surprised him with their wisdom. One night, as they lay in bed with her head on his chest, she said, "Sam, can I ask you something? Anything? Why did you leave civilization and come to the mountains? You never really explained." He was quiet for a long moment, his fingers running through her hair. "I had a family once. A wife and a son. This was back in Missouri before I came west. There was a fire. I was away and they were trapped inside. By the time I got back, it was too late." Felicity sat up, her eyes wide with sorrow. "Oh, Sam, I am so sorry. It was 15 years ago. I was not much older than you are now. After they died, I could not stand to be around people anymore. Everyone wanted to offer condolences or tell me it was God's will or that time would heal the pain. But none of that helped. So I came west, headed into the mountains, and stayed there. I only came down to town a few times a year for supplies. I convinced myself I was happier alone. But you were not. No, I was just hiding. And then I met you, and something in me woke up again. You reminded me that there is still good in the world, still beauty and innocence worth protecting. I am sorry about your wife and son. That must have been unbearable." It was. "But Felicity, I want you to know that my love for you is not about replacing them. It is something completely different. You are not a substitute for what I lost. You are your own person, and I love you for who you are." "I love you too," she said, and it was the first time she had spoken the words aloud. "I love you so much it frightens me sometimes." He pulled her back down into his arms. "Do not be frightened. I am not going anywhere. We are going to have a long, good life together." Winter came early to the mountains that year. By November, snow was falling regularly, and the temperatures dropped well below freezing. Samuel had been through many winters alone, but having Felicity with him changed everything. He found himself working harder to keep the cabin warm and comfortable, to make sure they had enough food and supplies. But it was not a burden. It was a joy to have someone to care for, someone to share the long, dark evenings with. Felicity struggled with some aspects of winter preparation. She would forget which vegetables needed to be stored in the root cellar versus which should be hung to dry. She would get confused about the order of steps for preserving meat. But Samuel remained patient, writing things down for her, creating systems that helped her remember. And she tried so hard, determined to pull her weight, determined to be a good partner. One particularly cold night in January, a blizzard hit. The wind howled around the cabin and snow piled up against the walls. Samuel kept the fire roaring, but even so, the cold seeped in. They huddled together under layers of blankets and furs, their breath visible in the frigid air. "Are you scared?" Samuel asked. "A little," Felicity admitted. "But mostly I feel safe because you are here. We will be fine. The cabin is solid and we have plenty of wood and food. We just need to wait it out." The storm lasted 3 days. During that time they talked endlessly, played card games that Samuel taught her, and made love slowly and sweetly under the warm blankets. On the third day, when the storm finally broke and the sun came out, they emerged to find the world transformed into a sparkling wonderland of snow and ice. "It is magical," Felicity breathed, standing on the porch and looking at the glittering landscape. "You are magical," Samuel said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Do you know that? You have magic in you, Felicity, a magic of kindness and wonder that makes everything better." She turned in his arms and kissed him. "You saved me. Before I met you, I thought I was broken. I thought I would spend my whole life being a burden to whoever was stuck caring for me. But you showed me that I am more than my limitations. You saved me too. I was half dead inside, just going through the motions of living. You brought me back to life." Spring arrived slowly, the snow melting in patches, revealing the brown earth beneath. As the world thawed, Felicity discovered she was pregnant. She told Samuel one morning as they worked together in the garden, planting seeds for the summer crop. "I think I am going to have a baby," she said quietly. Samuel froze, his hands in the dirt. Then slowly he stood and turned to face her. "Are you sure?" "Fairly sure. I have missed my monthly courses twice now, and I have been feeling sick in the mornings." He crossed to her in 2 long strides and swept her up in his arms, spinning her around. "A baby! We are going to have a baby," she laughed, clinging to him. "You are happy about it?" "Happy. I am overjoyed. Although I am also a little terrified. I have not been a father in so long. And I have never been a mother. What if I am not good at it? What if I forget to do important things and something happens to the baby?" Samuel set her down gently and took her face in his hands. "You are going to be an amazing mother. You have so much love to give, and that is what matters most. We will figure out the rest together. I am frightened, Sam. I know, but we will get through this together, just like we get through everything else." As Felicity's belly grew, Samuel became even more protective. He would not let her lift anything heavy or climb the ladder to the loft. He insisted she rest often and made sure she ate well. Felicity found his concern both touching and occasionally frustrating. "I am pregnant, not broken," she said one afternoon when he tried to stop her from gathering firewood. "I know that. But I also know that carrying a child is hard work, and I want to make sure you and the baby are healthy. The baby will be fine. I may be easily confused about some things, but I can feel that the baby is strong and healthy." She was right. Despite her worries, the pregnancy progressed smoothly. As summer arrived, Felicity bloomed. Her face took on a radiant glow, and her movements, though slower now with her growing belly, had a grace to them. Samuel would often catch himself just watching her, marveling at the miracle of her body creating new life. They talked often about what kind of parents they would be. Samuel was determined not to be harsh or demanding. He wanted their child to grow up feeling loved and accepted, the way Felicity had not growing up. Felicity worried about passing on her condition to the baby. "What if the baby is like me?" she asked one night. "What if they struggle the way I do? Then we will love them and support them, just like I love and support you. And they will be fine because they will have parents who see their worth, not their limitations." "You always know the right thing to say." "Not always, but I try." In late September, Felicity went into labor. Samuel had prepared as best he could, reading the medical books he had purchased on his last trip to town, gathering clean cloths and water. But when the moment came, he found himself nearly paralyzed with fear. What if something went wrong? They were miles from any doctor or midwife. It was just the two of them, but Felicity, despite her pain, remained remarkably calm. "It will be all right," she told him between contractions. "Women have been doing this since the beginning of time. My body knows what to do." She was right. After 12 hours of labor, as dawn broke over the mountains, their son was born. Samuel caught the baby, his hands shaking, and placed the squalling infant on Felicity's chest. She looked exhausted but triumphant, her hair plastered to her forehead with sweat, her face glowing with joy. "He is perfect," she whispered, running her fingers over the baby's tiny head. "He is absolutely perfect." Samuel knelt beside the bed, one arm around Felicity, the other gently touching his son. He felt tears streaming down his face, overwhelmed with love and gratitude. "What should we name him?" "I was thinking James. James Hartley. What do you think?" "I think it is perfect." "Hello, James." Welcome to the world. The first few weeks with a newborn were exhausting. Felicity struggled to remember the routines, would sometimes forget whether she had fed James an hour ago or 3 hours ago. But Samuel was there, patient and supportive, helping her establish systems that worked. He wrote down feeding times, created a simple chart they could reference. And gradually, Felicity found her rhythm. What she lacked in organizational skills, she made up for in pure love and devotion. She was a naturally nurturing mother, able to soothe James when he cried, seeming to understand his needs intuitively. Samuel watched her with their son and felt his heart swell with pride and love. "You were worried about being a good mother," he said one evening as Felicity nursed James. "But look at you. He adores you. You are exactly the mother he needs." "I still make mistakes. Yesterday I forgot to change his diaper and he got a rash. And then you remembered and you fixed it. That is not failure, Felicity. That is being human." As James grew, he proved to be a happy, healthy baby. He had Felicity's blonde hair and blue eyes, but Samuel's strong jaw and steady temperament. Samuel found fatherhood coming more naturally than he had expected. The pain of losing his first son would always be there, a scar on his heart, but it did not prevent him from loving James fully and completely. When James was 6 months old, Samuel made a trip down to the nearest town for supplies. He returned with lumber and tools, and over the next few months he built an addition onto the cabin, creating a separate bedroom for James and any future children they might have. "You think we might have more?" Felicity asked, watching him work. "If you want to. I am happy either way. But I will not lie, I would love to have a house full of children, especially if they are as wonderful as James and especially if they have you as their mother." Felicity blushed. Even after 2 years of marriage, Samuel's compliments still made her feel special. "I would like more children too. Although maybe we should wait until James is a little older and I have figured out how to keep one child alive." Samuel laughed. "You are doing much better than just keeping him alive. You are raising him with love and joy. That is what matters." Life in the mountains settled into a comfortable rhythm. They had their routines, their small traditions. Every evening, Samuel would read aloud while Felicity worked on her sewing or tended to James. Once a week, weather permitting, they would take a long walk as a family, exploring the surrounding wilderness. Felicity continued to work with her herb garden, becoming quite skilled at creating remedies for common ailments. When James was 2 years old, a young couple moved into a cabin about 5 miles away. Samuel met them while out hunting and mentioned it to Felicity. She was nervous about meeting new people, worried they would judge her the way so many had in the past. But when Sarah and Thomas Mitchell came to visit, they proved to be kind and accepting. Sarah was a quiet woman with a gentle manner, and she took to Felicity immediately. She never commented on Felicity's occasional confusion or her need to have things explained multiple times. Instead, she treated her as an equal, a friend. The two women began visiting each other regularly, and Felicity found herself opening up in ways she had not since leaving Casa Grande. "You are lucky to have Samuel," Sarah said one afternoon as they watched their children play together. Sarah had a daughter, Emma, who was just a few months older than James. Not many men would be so patient and understanding. I know, Felicity said. He saved my life in so many ways. Before I met him, I thought I was worthless. He showed me I was wrong. You are not worthless. You are one of the kindest people I have ever met, and you are a wonderful mother. Emma talks about you constantly. Felicity felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you. That means more to me than you know. When James was 4, Felicity became pregnant again. This time she was less anxious, more confident in her abilities. The pregnancy was easier than the first, and in the spring of 1883 she gave birth to a healthy baby girl. They named her Rose after the wild roses that grew near the cabin. Samuel held his daughter with the same awe he had held his son, marveling at her tiny perfection. 2 children, he said, shaking his head in wonder. I never thought I would be blessed with a family again. You deserve this happiness, Felicity told him. After everything you have been through, you deserve all the happiness in the world. As the years passed, their family flourished. James grew into a strong, curious boy who loved exploring the mountains with his father. Rose was quieter, more thoughtful, with a love of plants and animals that rivaled her mother's. The children knew their mother sometimes needed extra help remembering things, but they never thought less of her for it. To them, she was simply Mama, warm and loving and always there with a hug or a story. Samuel and Felicity built a life full of love and laughter, hard work and simple pleasures. They had challenges, certainly. There were difficult winters, close calls with wild animals, illnesses that tested their resolve. But they faced everything together, their bond growing stronger with each passing year. One evening, when James was 10 and Rose was 6, they sat together on the porch watching the sunset. The children were playing in the yard, their laughter floating on the warm summer air. Felicity leaned against Samuel's shoulder, his arm around her. You ever regret it? She asked quietly. Marrying someone like me? Samuel turned to look at her, surprised. Not for one single moment. Why would you even ask that? I still forget things. I still get confused. Just last week I added salt instead of sugar to the bread dough, and we had to throw the whole batch out. And we made new bread together. It was not a tragedy, Felicity. It was just a mistake. He tilted her chin up so she was looking at him. You listened to me. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. You brought me back to life. You gave me a family and a reason to wake up every morning with joy instead of just going through the motions. Your mind works differently than some people's, but that has never been a problem for me. It has only made me love you more because I have gotten to see the world through your eyes, and it is beautiful. I love you so much, she whispered, and I love you. I will love you until the day I die and probably beyond that. They kissed, soft and sweet, and then James called out, Papa, come play with us. Samuel laughed and stood, pulling Felicity up with him. Come on. Let us go play with our children while they still want to play with us. As the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, the Hartley family played together in the clearing beside their cabin. Samuel chased the children while Felicity watched, her heart full to bursting. She thought about the frightened, defeated young woman she had been in Casa Grande, unable even to count out coins for flour. That woman seemed like a different person now, someone from another life. Samuel had given her the greatest gift anyone could give. He had seen her not as broken or deficient, but as whole and worthy. He had loved her not in spite of her differences, but with full acceptance of who she was. And in his love, she had found the courage to see herself the same way. Years continued to pass in the mountains. James grew into a young man, tall and strong like his father, with his mother's kind heart. Rose became a skilled herbalist, her knowledge surpassing even Felicity's. In 1893, when James was 19, He married Sarah and Thomas Mitchell's daughter Emma, creating a new generation of mountain families. Samuel and Felicity became grandparents, and Felicity proved to be just as loving and patient with her grandchildren as she had been with her own children. By now, she had developed so many coping strategies for her challenges that most people who met her would never know she had ever been diagnosed as simple-minded. But more importantly, she no longer cared what people thought. She knew who she was, a woman who was loved and who loved deeply in return. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Samuel took Felicity back to the spot where he had first asked her to come to the mountains with him. It was late summer, and the desert around Casa Grande was hot and golden. They had ridden down for supplies and to visit the town where their story had begun. Standing in the same place where he had proposed all those years ago, Samuel took both of Felicity's hands in his. She was 40 now, with strands of silver in her blonde hair and laugh lines around her eyes. To Samuel, she had never been more beautiful. 20 years ago, I asked you to take a chance on me, he said. To leave everything you knew and trust that I would take care of you. It was a crazy thing to ask after knowing you for only a week. It was crazy, Felicity agreed, smiling, but it was also the best decision I ever made. I want you to know that you have made me happier than I ever thought possible. Every day with you is a gift. You are my heart, Felicity. You always will be. She stood on her toes and kissed him. And you are mine. You saw me when no one else did. You believed in me when I did not believe in myself. You gave me a life I never dreamed I could have. We gave each other that life. We built it together. They stood there for a long moment, holding each other as the desert wind whispered around them. Then they mounted their horses and headed back to the mountains, back to their home and their family, back to the life they had created from love and faith and sheer determination. As they rode, Felicity thought about the doctor who had diagnosed her all those years ago, the man who had said she was simple-minded and would never be able to live independently. She wondered what he would think if he could see her now. A wife, a mother, a grandmother, a skilled herbalist, a woman with a full and meaningful life. But then she decided she did not care what he would think. His opinion had never mattered. The only opinion that mattered was Samuel's, and he had always thought her mind was beautiful and her heart even more so. The years continued to be kind to them. They lived to see their grandchildren grow, to celebrate more anniversaries, to add more rooms to their cabin as their family expanded. Through it all, Samuel remained Felicity's steadfast protector and champion, and Felicity remained Samuel's heart and joy. In the autumn of 1898, when Felicity was 45 and Samuel was 62, they sat together on their porch watching their grandchildren play. James and Emma had 3 children now, and Rose had married a kind young man from town and had 2 of her own. The cabin that had once housed just Samuel now rang with the laughter of multiple generations. "We have built something good here," Samuel said, his arm around Felicity. "We have built something extraordinary," she corrected. "We have built a family founded on love and acceptance. Our children and grandchildren will never know what it is like to feel less than or broken. They will grow up knowing they are valued exactly as they are." "That is your legacy," Samuel said. "You taught all of us that being different is not being deficient. You taught us that love and patience can overcome any challenge." "No," Felicity said firmly. "That is our legacy. We did this together." Samuel smiled and pulled her closer. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun began to set, painting the sky in the colors they had watched together for over 2 decades. The mountains rose around them, solid and eternal, and in that moment, everything was perfect. As darkness fell and the first stars appeared, Samuel and Felicity went inside to join their family for dinner. The long table Samuel had built years ago was crowded with people, all talking and laughing, passing dishes and sharing stories. At the head of the table, Samuel looked around at the faces he loved most in the world, and his heart was full. Felicity caught his eye from across the table and smiled. That same tentative, hopeful smile she had given him in Casa Grande 20 years ago. Except now there was no fear in it, only joy and love and certainty. She was no longer the frightened young woman who could not count her coins. She was a woman who had found her place in the world, who had discovered her worth, who had built a life of meaning and purpose. And it had all started with a mountain man who had seen past her struggles to the beauty beneath, who had loved her not in spite of her differences, but because of her complete, authentic self. In loving her, Samuel had given Felicity the greatest gift, the gift of believing in herself. And in return, she had given him a reason to rejoin the world, a family to love, and a heart full of joy to replace the grief he had carried for so long. Their story was not one of grand gestures or dramatic rescues, though Samuel had indeed rescued Felicity from a life of diminishment and despair. It was a story of quiet devotion, daily choice, and steadfast love. It was a story of two people who found each other against the odds and built something beautiful together in the wilderness. As the evening wore on and the grandchildren were tucked into their beds, Samuel and Felicity climbed the stairs to their loft. They moved slowly now, their bodies bearing the marks of years of hard work and mountain living, but they moved together, always together. Lying in bed that night, Felicity said, "Sam, I need to tell you something." "What is it?" "I am grateful for all of it. For every moment, every challenge, every joy. If I could go back and change things, make it so my mind worked like everyone else's, I would not do it. Because then I might not have needed you, and you might not have noticed me, and we might not have had this life." Samuel felt his throat tighten with emotion. "Your mind is perfect exactly as it is. It gave me you. It gave us this family. I would not change a single thing." They fell asleep in each other's arms, just as they had done for 20 years, just as they would continue to do for many more years to come. Outside, the mountains stood guard over their small cabin, and the stars wheeled overhead in their eternal dance, and in the morning they would wake up and do it all again. Live, love, and build their life together one day at a time. The story of Samuel and Felicity Hartley became something of a legend in those mountains. People spoke of the mountain man who had married the simple-minded girl from Casa Grande and taken her to live in the wilderness. Some said it would never work, that she would not survive, that he would regret his impulsive decision. But those people were wrong. What they built together was stronger than anyone had imagined. It was a love that transcended judgment and expectation, a partnership that proved that different did not mean less. Felicity thrived in the mountains not because Samuel fixed her or changed her, but because he accepted her completely and created an environment where her strengths could flourish, and her challenges could be managed with grace and patience. In the end, their story was not about a diagnosis or a limitation. It was about two people who found each other when they each needed saving, and who chose every day to love, support, and cherish each other. It was about a man who looked past what society said was wrong with a woman and saw only what was right. And it was about a woman who learned to see herself through the eyes of someone who loved her, and in doing so, discovered her own strength and worth. They lived out their days in those mountains, surrounded by family and held together by love. Samuel remained strong and protective until the end, his muscular frame a source of comfort and security for Felicity. And Felicity remained his heart, the woman who had brought him back to life and given him reasons to smile every single day. When Samuel finally passed in his sleep at the age of 78, with Felicity's head resting on his chest as it had done for 34 years, his last words were, "Thank you for choosing me." And when Felicity followed him 2 years later, at peace and surrounded by her children and grandchildren, her last words were, "I am coming, Sam. Wait for me." They were buried together on the mountainside near their cabin, under the towering pines, with a view of the peaks they had loved so well. Their children and grandchildren continued to live in those mountains, passing down the stories of Samuel and Felicity, teaching each new generation that love sees beyond limitations, that kindness matters more than convention, and that sometimes the most beautiful minds are the ones that work differently from the rest. And in the wildflowers that grew on their grave every spring, in the wind that whispered through the pines, in the stars that shone over the mountains every night, the love of Samuel and Felicity Hartley endured, a testament to the power of acceptance, devotion, and a love that saw beauty where others saw only challenges, and found perfection where others saw only flaws.